My name is Carrie Mathews. I grew up in this church, and today I am very excited and honored to be presenting the lay stewardship sermon. When I'm not in church or being a mom to my girls, I travel the country delivering leadership development workshops to technology executives. Sometimes I meet with a group of 7 people. Sometimes it might be over 200. But these sessions involve moderating a panel or sometimes giving a presentation. In others, I act as a game master, actually leading groups of people through an idea brainstorming competition. The commonality between all my workshops is the use of interactive exercises to encourage these teams to reflect on their current practices and processes and identify new ways of approaching their roles. So, given that I have the time this morning as well as the microphone, I thought I'd bring a little bit of my work to you all this morning. Here's the exercise. Take a moment and think about your most memorable years. Those moments in time that you can recall like yesterday, where something important happened to you, or maybe you had a significant impact on someone else. How far back did you go? Who was involved? Did any of the moments that came to your mind surprise you? To make this a fully interactive sermon, look to the person next to you and state 1 or 2 of the years that came to mind. Okay, now you can come back to me. When I completed this exercise myself, as I prepared, 7 came to mind that I wanted to share with you this morning. 1994, the year I graduated from Bedford High School and truly had my whole life ahead of me as I headed off to Colgate University. For those of you who read the amazing book Wonder, the first half of this year was similar to what the main character August talked about when he said, everyone deserves at least one standing ovation in their life. 1994 was my year of standing ovations. 1997, I found a paying job in Washington, D.C. for the summer. I found an apartment, and as luck would have it, I found a roommate who would pay his share of the bill. An acquaintance of mine who also went to Colgate, the roommate's name was Charles Mathews. We started dating, and you know the rest of the story there. 2003. Under the watchful eye of Frank Fernaro, I stood probably 5 steps to the left and said, "I will," to my fiancé, and began the adventure of a lifetime. 2005. But was 2003 really the start of it all? Or was this year truly the beginning of my life? My whole world changed for the better and newly began when Avery Edith entered the world in August. 2008. Now our family was complete with the birth of Mirabella Ann in November. She would later play baby Jesus in the Christmas pageant, and at the end was literally carried from the manger down to the baptismal font for her baptism. I'm not sure if it can actually get more holier than that. Now, jumping back in time for my next moment, 1986. I was 10 years old, a 4th grader in Mrs. Hoyt's class in Joe Blaine School. Boston sports were out of control successful. Being a Celtics and a Red Sox fan was the it thing. In January, I watched in horror as the Challenger space shuttle exploded before my eyes while I watched it on a TV set while skiing at Sugarloaf Mountain in Maine. I started to pray every night. No one told me I had to say my nightly prayers. I just started to do it. I still remember the beginning of my prayer. God, please bless my family, my friends, the people who are at war, the 7 astronauts who were killed in the Challenger disaster. The power of prayer. The power of prayer coming from the mind and the voice of a child. It's really something, isn't it? For many children, prayer calls to mind, please, Santa, bring me a Cabbage Patch Kid doll. Let me get 100 on this test. Please help me find a boyfriend. I won't deny ever saying any of those particular prayers. But when I think back to those moments when I would speak to God directly from my childhood bed, instead I remember sending my immediate family's health up in prayer, remembering faraway people who I knew were fighting in conflict but didn't know personally, and making sure friends were being taken care of. All selfless requests in my personal prayers to God. Each Sunday, we come together in community prayer, and the power of our united voices is something to behold. Whether it's the Collect for St. Paul's, the Psalm, or passages from the Book of Common Prayer, we are sending our words up in prayer to God as a community. Ever notice that when Chris starts us off in prayer, his voice rings loud, and then he consciously brings it quieter, so that our prayers combine into a single voice, with no one better than anyone else. In the second reading this morning, in Paul's letter to the Thessalonians, this section of the passage stood out to me as I reflected on prayer. We always give thanks to God for all of you and mention you in our prayers, constantly remembering before our God and Father your work of faith and labor of love and steadfastness of hope in our Lord Jesus Christ. Paul is reminding them that they are not alone. They are not going about their day without recognition from others. Community prayer is bridging them across the miles. Work of faith, labor of love, steadfastness of hope. I see all of these at work at St. Paul's because of all of you. Faith, love, and hope. The recognition that others, you in this congregation, are praying for me and my contributions to the greater good brings with it a whole deeper meaning and ultimately strengthens my relationship with God. Personal prayer and community prayer are both important parts of my life, the former being my direct connection to God, and the latter being the experience we have together on Sundays. For those of you keeping track and keeping me honest, there is one more memorable year that I wanted to share with you today. 2000. Yes, it was the millennial, and yes, we survived Y2K. I was 24 years old and still living in Washington, D.C. I had a great job that I could walk to, can you even imagine? And a church that was just 2 blocks away, St. Margaret's Episcopal Church. I decided to join the handbell choir and taught myself how to ring. Having no kids meant that I had this thing called free time. I wonder what they thought of this youngin' who had joined the musical ranks at St. Margaret's. I felt called to this church community, ringing my handbells during church, attending services, bringing my parents when they came to visit, meeting with the rector, Susan Blue, and attending coffee hours. Looking back, it seems pretty impressive to me that I did this by myself at such a young age. With my church involvement, it became important to me to also make a financial commitment. Near the end of the year, I decided on my own to make my first stewardship pledge. Now remember, I was 24 years old, rent was high, my paycheck, not so much. I pledged $150 a year and felt like I had made it. I was really an adult, a member of this church, contributing to its mission, operating expenses, and music program. It may not have been a lot monetarily, but it was a lot to me. I was making a statement and a commitment to moving this church forward. Over time, I moved to North Carolina with Charles for 2 years and joined a new handbell choir, this time at a Methodist church. But I didn't attend services when I wasn't playing. When we moved back to the Boston area, there was no doubt where we would end up for our church community. It was a no-brainer to come to St. Paul's, the church my grandfather had built back in 1955. Whether commuting from a Brighton apartment or our 18-minute drive every Sunday from Acton, and yes, I have timed it, those doors into the narthex welcome me just as they did as a child. My stewardship pledge has grown from $150, but the feeling of commitment, of belonging, and of contributing to the church remains the same. We all know that moments in time are fleeting. Looking over there at my kids, especially as a parent, 4th grade and kindergarten, feels like they were just in an exerciser. But it's those powerful moments that speak to you for far longer than they actually exist the first time around. The constant replay of your life's memories that are so integral to making you the person you are. Those moments in time that are the sweetest ones of all. When concluding one of my leadership development workshops, I always encourage attendees to take what they've thought about and learned and move forward. We all go to talks where it's great to hear stories highlighting new strategies and ways of thinking, and then you leave the room and go back to operating like you've always done. I encourage you to take the momentum and continue it. Take your moments in time and what they taught you, your thoughts about prayer and stewardship, and keep moving forward to make a true difference a week, a month, a year from now. Use coffee hour as one way to share the memorable years that came to your mind this morning with others in the community. This community of prayerful people who are all contributing to making St. Paul's the spiritual home we know and love. I hope some of my reflections and enthusiasm has translated in a unique way for each of you. And you know what? Even 28 years later, I can still remember the closing lines of my nightly prayer that I recited in 1986 as a 10-year-old little girl in her bedroom down the street at 2 McIntosh Road. I love you so much, God, and I believe in you too. Amen.